On a glorious late summer morning on the coast of Monte Carlo, Count Frick von Twist was found shot dead by an arrow in his wine cellar by his trusted friend and nurse Eliza Dill. The only witness to this murder seems to be the Count's trusted pet cat, Python. Python has much to say, but unfortunately, the only person who truly understood her lies murdered. The Count, in equal parts feared and admired, had thrown a grand dinner in honor of his 80th birthday the night before at the luxurious Hotel Hamilton, Monte Carlo. A close circle of illustrious guests were present at the dinner and were entertained to the Count's many shenanigans. The Count's distraught daughter, Bae Zhun, not unlike many of our times, has little faith in the Monte Carlo Police Department's ability to find her father's killer. Owner of the Hotel Hamilton, Mr. Stan Hamilton, suggests consulting an old friend, Jahnvi Watson, part of the famous Holmes-Watson detective duo, who happened to be vacationing in the hotel.
Holmes, Watson, there's been a murder.
Bae Zhun loves her father, Frick von Twist, but knows that he was an enigmatic man with many secrets and many enemies.
Watson, it is crucial to my model that you come up with an index of suspicion for each of the suspects as you interview them. There are 5 key components to the model. 1. Does the suspect have an alibi? 2. Does the suspect stand to gain from the Count's will? 3. How are their archery skills? 4. Does anyone else suspect them? 5. Do they harbor any animosity towards the Count? Come on, Watson. The game's afoot.
Father didn't really approve of Stan. We had our differences, but I loved him. Who you really need to check on is that actress that he brought here. She's a gold digger.
I know what they think of Frick and I, but we're just pals, you know? I went to bed earlier than the rest of them. But you know who is suspicious? That barrister lady.
That spoiled starlet. She would say that. So, the will.
It all mostly goes to Bae Zhun.
A few pennies here and there to the others. That army friend of my brother's. Now you know there's skeletons in that closet.
When you go to war together, you become brothers in arms. Did asking for money every now and then? I'd hardly call that blackmail. This nurse lady though, Parsley, she's suspiciously good at archery.
I took care of Countess Frida while she was alive. I've been a loyal companion for many years, and they've been good to me. What would I have to gain from their death?
Yes, the Count likes to keep his enemies close. Why do you think he invited the press? If I were you, I'd check on that Bloomington fellow. I bet Von Twist has something on him.
I was playing some late-night golf with his sister, Shannon. There's your alibi. Really, this is a waste of my time. You should really be investigating that young, blonde actress, Ingrid.
Well, there's horrible things to say about Ingrid. Here's a more compelling motive. Bae's fiancé Stan needs the inheritance for the hotel.
Python, if only you could tell us what you knew.
This is excellent work, Watson. Just brilliant. You know, I think what we might need is a kind of item response model.
What's that?
Well, let's say that each suspect has a latent culpability, which we don't know about yet. Culpability. Now, we can use your suspicion index in a model that can give us a culpability for a given suspect, and we can test that against the evidence.
But all we have are a bunch of zeros and ones. That's nothing to go on.
Precisely the opposite, Watson. For a given suspicion index, using these model parameters, alpha and beta, we can generate a given culpability for your suspect, and then test that against each of these data points.
That's all very well, Holmes, but how do we find alpha and beta?
Give me a moment.
Holmes? Holmes.
Well, hello there. This is Watson. And this was the data that I collected. We want to know the culpability of each of these suspects. And we want to know how they vary across the different murder proxies. So my friend is suggesting an item response model which has two parameters, alpha and beta. Alpha represents the culpability of each suspect, and beta represents the murder proxy. Now, if you remember, a logit function gives you an output of 0 or 1. What we're really looking for is, as a suspect is more culpable, we want the probability to be higher, and as a proxy is more likely, we want the probability to be higher. We have 10 suspects. For each suspect, we're going to draw culpabilities from a bell curve. What does this mean? Well, if you see, the curve is centered at 0. We want to presume everybody's guilt or innocence. If alpha were 0, we get a probability of 0.5. And that's where we would like to start, with the same prior for each suspect. Now, it's not just culpabilities. We have the different murder proxies to deal with. We need to draw from distributions for them as well. We have 5 murder proxies, and we're once again going to assume that each of these is drawn from a normal distribution, centered on 0. What would this exactly mean? Imagine if everybody were an archer in our suspect group, then archery wouldn't be that much of an indicator of whether it was responsible for the murder or not. Similarly, if nobody benefited from the will, no one had anything to gain. So my friend is now searching this 16-dimensional space. How is it 16? 10 suspects, 5 proxies, and distributions. How is he searching this? We will have to ask him. For now, such concerns must wait, for he's here with the posteriors, which are the result of fitting the model. We have 10 posteriors, 1 for each alpha, and we have 5 posteriors, 1 for each beta. Now, they may all not look very different to you, but consider looking at it this way. Don't you see? Bae Zhun looks most culpable among the 10 suspects so far. So you're saying you did this very complex math, used up all this computational space to come up with the most obvious suspect, Bae Zhun?
We balance the probabilities and choose the most likely. It is the scientific use of the imagination.
Well, I'm sure you could not have arrived at this mind-blowing conclusion without...
Mr. Holmes! Mr. Holmes!
The new will says the inheritance is to be split equally between the Viscountess Bae Zhun and the actress, Miss Ingrid Hepburn.
Wait, so your model is wrong.
Patience, Watson. As a man lesser than me once said, all models are
wrong, but some are useful, blah, blah, blah. How do you propose to make this one useful?
elementary, my dear Watson. You see, our deduction had no problems at all. It was merely that we encountered data that we did not yet know about. The question is, can we incorporate this data into our model? We must do an update, a Bayesian update, if you will.
so as to make Ingrid culpable.
Well, now that would be guesswork. Hunches are useful, but data, now that's where it's at. We examine our hunches through the lenses of fact. Watson, alter the will beneficiary column in the data frame to reflect our new information.
Run the model from scratch.
Not really. You see, our former posterior becomes our new prior. Oh, I get it now. Holmes.
Hello there. It's Watson again. So, we never really finished what we were talking about. How did Holmes go from the prior distribution centered at 0 to the posterior distribution centered near 0.7? Not just for the Viscountess, but for, well, everybody and all the proxies. Well, suppose there were only two suspects. Let's say Bae Zhun and Barrister Von Twist, and really no proxies, just a set of binary outcomes. Here's what our three-dimensional surface of the parameter space would look like. From this surface, we need to draw samples that will best match our data. We're not merely looking for points here, we're looking for entire distributions. And we must be very strategic about searching the space, otherwise we're going to tax the mind palace enormously. Let's say we start with a point on the surface. We evaluate the posterior probability at this point. Now, we pick a direction and move a certain distance away from this point and evaluate the posterior probability there. If it adheres less to our data, we will reject this direction and move in a different way. We would like to keep moving towards regions of high posterior probability. If it is a region of high posterior probability, we keep it. If not, we discard it and we move to a different point. We repeat this procedure a large number of iterations and return all our accepted points on the surface. We're thus returned thousands of acceptable posterior samples. This process is known as Markov chain Monte Carlo. Now, what happens if this process goes awry and somehow we never manage to get to regions of high posterior probability? This can and does happen. We must then examine the model, its parameters and hyperparameters, to see if the reason our algorithm cannot reach convergence is due to a fundamentally unsound hypothesis. We just did this process in our 16-dimensional space. If my dear friend Holmes could time travel like I have, he would surely agree that a worthy replacement of his mind palace would be the exhaustive toolkit of PyMC3. The method he employs, Markov chain Monte Carlo, is implemented in a computationally efficient way using what's known as the nuts or no U-turn sampler. Here we have 4 chains and 2,000 samples drawn, giving us 8,000 acceptable possibilities for each of our 15 parameters. It is from these distributions that we're able to construct an acceptable range of culpability values according to our inference, or what is known as a credible interval. So what you see here, the points represent the mean of the distributions, and the ends of the line, the acceptable range of values the culpability can take for each suspect. Now, back to what was happening. How are we going to handle the information regarding the new will? Well, it's simple. The posteriors from the previous model run become our new priors. We take these updated priors, rerun the model, and voila! Here's what we have. The blue points here represent the previous values, and the green, the new values. As you can see, the only person to have shifted rightward is Miss Ingrid Hepburn. She must be culpable.
Holmes.
Yes, of course. Ingrid.
Once again, my friend discovers the obvious, but now I'm having fun. It must be Ingrid. She must have had Italians with the count.
Yes, but the will is moot. Let me explain. You need 2 witnesses for it to be legally binding. My brother must have been expecting to sign the will today.
But this is excellent. No one without a detailed understanding of the finer points of the law could know that. Least of all Miss Hepburn. Let us keep it that way, and ask for everyone to convene. Watson, shall we play a game of cat and mouse?
Let me get the others. I have some news for all of you. Grave news. My brother, Count Frick von Twist, he rewrote his will the night he died.
So who gets the money?
The inheritance is to be split equally between my niece, Bae Zhun, and her.
Ah, I knew it!
Oh, Frick, you didn't have to. He knew I had debts, but this is unimaginable.
Oh, so you had no idea. There were footsteps in his room last night, you know? How did you brainwash him, you know?
There will be no need for that kind of talk, Viscountess. But I have to inform you, Miss Hepburn. We have done extensive calculations. My colleague's brain has literally been on fire. Wouldn't it be great if they had some kind of computational device to run the simulations and...
My colleague likes to ramble, but what she means is we have found the murderer, and it is none other than Miss Hepburn.
No.
No! No. Ingrid is the purest soul that ever was.
Now, there'll be no more of that kind of talk, Barbara.
My father is a man full of foolish ideas. You can print this in the Herald, Gazette, whatever, Mr. Murdoch. I don't care anymore. It's time we let them know.
Let us know what?
We're in love. She was with me the night the Count was killed.
Barbara!
Should I say something? So there you have it, Mr. Holmes. Ingrid had an alibi for when the Count was killed.
Well, I am flabbergasted by that. What is it I always say, Watson? When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
May I request to see the 2 wills, please?
Of course, my lord.
So with this model, we could do the same thing again. Let's change the alibi column in the data frame. That's a bit absurd. Why is there a cat in the data set?
Brilliant. We're all Bayesians now, eh?
Excuse me?
It doesn't mean you, Viscountess. Come now, Holmes. Lady Bloomington has a point. Maybe we should rerun the models. You know, with lesser samples, so we don't tax the Mind Palace.
Just a minute now. There's another significant difference between the 2 wills. The former leaves Miss Dill a meager £1,000, but now she gets his seaside cottage in Monte Carlo.
She killed my father for a cottage?
No, Bae, don't you see? I always knew there was something between Eliza and my brother. And Ingrid, the timing, it just makes so much sense.
So it's jealousy?
No, don't be silly. The whole time that Frida was sick, Eliza only took 9 months off. I always wondered if it was a baby, and now it makes sense. There was a baby, my brother's and hers, a daughter.
I didn't know he was changing the will. He brings her here, refuses to fight these ridiculous rumors. Refuses to acknowledge her and his only his daughter while Bayesian gets everything. Oh, my child.
So you wanted to frame Bae so that the next of kin, Ingrid, would inherit the estate.
I was desperate and angry. He was so cruel.
You got through to him, Eliza, which is more than any of us manage. That blackguard had a conscience after all.
What do the detectives think about all this?
Now that we have the altered suspicion indices, the change in the alibi, you know, I think we may find the answer.
And so my friend Holmes entered the Mind Palace one last time. One for the road, as they say. And here are our final results. Nurse Eliza Dill is the murderer.
Watson, it's Dill. Nurse Dill. It's got to be her.
Welcome back, sport. Yes, it's Nurse Theragon, Sherlock. What do we do now?
I have no interest in the money, but Bae Zhun, please go easy on my mother. Niece Ingrid, I'm sorry to inform you, the will is invalid. There were no witnesses. Bae gets it all.
Auntie, it doesn't matter. We're sisters and we hold equal claim to our father's legacy. I'm ashamed of my behavior towards Ingrid. I will ask for clemency for your mother. Maybe together you and I can lay our father's murky past to rest.